talk about spiritual practices, spiritual care of the self during difficult times. And I think it's fair to say that for kind of everybody right now, it's hard times. And what I wanted was to try and offer you some simple things to do, simple ways of supporting yourself from a spiritual care point of view. We hear a lot about self-care and people talking about, taking a bath and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that kind of thing's really important. But when times are really difficult, those sorts of things are harder to fit into our lives for a lot of reasons. But also they only kind of nourish us on a relatively superficial kind of level. And I know from my personal kind of experience that one of the things that slips for me most dramatically when I'm struggling is my spiritual practice. Like at the time when I need it the most is the time when it's liable to slip away from me. It becomes that extra thing that I don't have kind of the time and the energy for, even though it's the thing that is liable to support me the most. Now, that's changed for me quite a lot in the last few months because of my time in the last few months spent working in hospice. I'm really, really privileged to be a spiritual care volunteer at a local hospice under the support and guidance of a really amazing spiritual care chaplain. And we talk an awful lot about how our faith holds us up and about how we support others, whether it matters what our respective kind of faiths and beliefs are. And where I always kind of come back to is actually, in terms of helping others, what I believe, like what my fundamental spiritual beliefs are, actually don't matter for the person that I'm helping. What matters is how my beliefs hold me up so that I can make space and be there for them. And I feel like in hard times, like that's what we need as well. We need to use our beliefs, use our practices to hold ourselves up so that we can cope, so that we can support others, so that we can keep doing what needs to be done. And I've seen some great posts around in the last few days about, supporting ourselves and supporting each other. I saw a really great post actually earlier this evening about spiritual care, but it was a long, long list of things. And I'm really hyper aware that if you are very busy, very overwhelmed. A lot of us are already dealing with stuff, even before all the extra that's going on in the world right now. Like a lot of us are dealing with varying levels of of grief, of trauma, of stress, of overwhelm. And so giving you a big long list of things to try and do, you're going to get to like about the fourth thing on the list and just switch off because you're going to be like, I can't fit all of this in. So I had a long car journey today and I was thinking about all of this, and I was thinking, I think for me, there are kind of like three cornerstone practices that can all stand alone as a practice, but also can be stacked as practices. So I would hope that in some way or another you would be able to manage one or maybe two or maybe all three in very sort of short amounts of time, kind of as needed, as best you can with, sort of where you are. It's the old do what you can with what you've got where you are right now. And there are plenty of other things that are really great to do if you can manage them, fit them in. I'm going to do some other lives or possibly videos or blog posts or what have you about some of those other things. But for me, these are like the three like fundamental practices that I think help me, and I want to say to you, try these because they might help you too. And you might already be doing them, and that's fine, and that's great. And I'd love to know about how they support you, because I know how they support me, but like I might be sitting here telling you to do these things and you might be like, well, that's no good, it doesn't work for me, it doesn't suit me. it doesn't suit my, life or whatever. But, give it some consideration. These things, I'm offering you, they're an invitation. They're not prescriptive. I'm not telling you you must do these things. There's no expectation of, perfection. Do what you can, as best you can. But what I do know is that if you can try and do something consistently, it really, really helps. It helps at the best of times, let alone when things are more difficult. So, what are my 3 things? 1, breath. And you've probably seen people talk about breath before, and I am not going to kind of start telling you about all sorts of weird and wonderful ways of breathing. There's a lot of people out there teaching about various types of yogic breathing and things. For me, it's actually like really, really simple. When I was a little girl, my mum taught me the way she used to breathe when she was meditating. And I remember her describing it to me and saying, smell the rose, blow out the candle. Okay, so we're talking about taking a long, slow breath in through the nose, and then a really long, slow breath, which should be longer than the out through the mouth. Now, fast forward kind of 25 years or so, when I did, I trained to be a hypnobirthing teacher a few years ago. The core breath practice that we were taught to teach birthing mothers was a long, slow breath in through the nose, longer, slow breath out through the mouth. And it's because it brings your adrenaline down, it soothes the system. So just in case sometimes people need a kind of a visual of what things look like. So what I'm talking about is okay, like blow out the candle, yeah, not just but and that sort of breathing it slows everything down. And I find that if nothing else, even if you can't sit and breathe like that for a long time, 3 of those breaths, okay? 3 of those breaths before you do something. 3 of those breaths before you have to pick up the phone and make that difficult phone call. 3 of those breaths before you have to open that door to go into that place that you're really dreading going into. 3 of those breaths before you climb out of your car and go and do whatever it is you've got to go and do right now. It's such a small, simple thing. It takes like less than a minute. Yeah, 3 long, slow breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Smell the rose, blow out the candle 3 times. So that's number 1. Thinking about breath and thinking about using breath as a way of making space and about how to calm a nervous system that may be very overwhelmed right now, and yet you've still got to keep going. You've still got stuff you've got to do. So it's a really quick and easy way of just finding that pause, that moment, that place to just find that extra bit of strength that you need to do the next thing. 2 is silence. Not easy. We are living in a very noisy, busy, overwhelming world, and like we're on kind of all the time. And a lot of us quite often will tend to have the radio on, have maybe the TV on, or there's always people kind of in our spaces, that kind of thing. But actually, if we can find opportunities to take a few minutes silence every day, it can really help to just kind of level things out in amongst all that hum and bustle. If you can take silence in nature, that's even better. And what I'm talking about is not necessarily meditation, although some of you may find it meditative, or you may slip into meditation from that place. What I'm talking about is choosing to take an amount of time, like as much as you can spare, and it may only be 5 minutes, but to just be silent, to move away from the electronics, to move away from the people, get away from the background noises as much as you can. I mean, it's very hard to find anywhere that's really, like truly silent in this world, which is why going outdoors can be really helpful in that respect, because while you may get some kind of nature noises, they're quite soothing. So rather than being interfering and triggering off, other kind of thought processes and activating different parts of the brain. So what we're looking for is space to just be with ourselves, to be quiet. And of course, as I said at the beginning, these practices stack. So if you can find that 5 minutes for silence, then you can then stack on top of it the practice with the breath. Like, I get it. I'm a busy mum. I'm a busy working mum. Like, if it comes to it, go and do these things on the loo. Assuming you don't get followed by small children or animals. But for those of us that are parents, those of us that are busy workers, whatever, um, if the best place that you can manage to do these things is to shut yourself in the bathroom for 5 minutes and sit on the loo or sit on the edge of the bath, that will do. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in front of an altar. It doesn't have to be on a beautiful meditation cushion or a yoga mat. What I'm looking for is for you to try and find spaces where it's easy to do these things, rather than looking for extra external places, spaces and times, which then just becomes another thing to fit in, another place to go, another thing to do on a never-ending list. What I'm trying to help you do is find a place to get off the hamster wheel, and for some people that might be the bathroom. At least most bathrooms have a lock, is my thinking, but in a good world, hopefully maybe you might be able to say to family, I'm going for 5 minutes upstairs or outside, or in my car, like wherever you need to go. Find space for silence, find space to reduce the background noise. I stopped listening to the radio in my car months ago now, because I just found I was so saturated with noise all the time. There's a lot of noise in my family home. I'm often out in the world doing a lot of things, dealing with a lot of people, and so actually my car, I'd get in it and the radio would come on automatically, and it was just like another wall of noise kind of getting at me and triggering me and filling my head, and news and travel and music, and it was too much. So I turned it off, and unless I've got other people in the car or I'm on a really long journey and I feel the need to like kind of have some company, I'm driving around in a silent car these days, and the difference actually has been massive, and my car has kind of become this quiet haven space. And like I say, the thought to do this live, the kind of the things I wanted to give you came to me during a hour and a half's journey in the car today, in silence, because my brain had space to think. And not only that, but even though I couldn't write anything down, I've remembered what I thought because it wasn't being interrupted by stuff from the outside. So practice number 2, find spaces for silence, like proper, as best you can, silence. And finally, practice 3 for me is prayer. Now, people that know me or have watched me for some time will know that fundamentally my religious beliefs, my spiritual beliefs, my faith is pagan, so earth-centered, goddess-centric, and I think people tend to perceive prayer as something that's quite is more of a kind of thing in the main religions, particularly in Christianity, obviously, and so on. And I know kind of some pagans who aren't comfortable with the concept of prayer. Now, when I say prayer, I don't mean sitting down and asking my goddess to make things better. I don't mean sitting down and asking my goddess to somehow change what's happening in my life or in the world. When I sit down to pray, for me, it's a bit like ringing my mum or ringing my best friend. I'm picking up a virtual phone to my divine best friend and I'm saying, I'm struggling. Please be with me right now in my struggling. Please be with me now in my pain, in my grief, in my struggle. Please be with me so that I know that I am not alone. Please let me know, let me feel that I am loved and I am connected to you and that I am not alone. And invariably for me, when I pray in that way, when I think of it as being in relationship with what I think of as divine, I can feel that connection and it strengthens me. It creates something within me. It creates a calm, it creates a centeredness and a groundedness. And again, it's another one of these things that allows me to just find that thing I need to find so that I can carry on, so that I can do the next thing, so that when I go to the hospice and I sit with somebody who is dying, I can just be with them where they are, because it's not about me. I'm allowing my practices and my beliefs to hold me up so that I can be with them where they are. And I mean, it's not for me as a soul guide, as a priest, a chaplain, whatever title you would give me. That is fundamentally how I function, when I support anybody, whether that's one-to-one, whether it's in groups, on retreats, or what have you. I am using what I have inside of me, my connection to the divine, to hold me so that I can hold others. And it makes such a difference to me. So I'd like to sort of offer to you this suggestion of prayer, but not prayer that is asking, not prayer that is begging, not prayer that is fixed words written by somebody else. And sometimes it's not words at all. And actually, the first two practices that I spoke about, like I said, these things, they stack. So breath, silence, and prayer. If you've taken those moments to go into that space with your breath, if you've gone into that silence, you move into a place of prayer just by your very stillness and your very presence. And in those spaces, you can look for that connection to what you call divine. And that's going to be different for each of us. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. They may be very different from mine, but I truly believe that if you can take space to breathe, take space for silence, and take space for prayer, you can make quite a fundamental change to your way of being and your way of coping with what life has to throw at us. And it throws a lot at us. It throws a lot at us during the best of times, but 2020 so far has really been the year of keep throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing. And there is clearly more to come. And I'm not saying that these practices are some kind of cure-all, fix-all, will make everything better, but I do believe that they become a foundation from which we can move through the world and just cope a little bit better, to keep moving, to keep doing what needs to be done. I hope this was helpful. Do let me know if you watch this live or on the replay. I'd love to know what you thought and whether it's been useful. and I'll be back again soon with some other ideas about what spiritual practice can look like when you're living in a busy modern world. Take care, folks.